Food is sacred. We have our various traditions about how we have grace at the beginning of meals. And that we find that food is really at the web of all of creation. It is a part of our sacred beliefs and traditions and rituals. For the Jewish faith, it is the Seder meal that is served at the start of Passover. For Hindus, there is food associated with every god. They like particular foods. And there are the sacred cows and the milk and the butter. And for Christians, we talk about and focus on the table and the communion meal where we remember what Jesus did with his followers on the night before which he was betrayed. We have these important traditions about food within our faith. And we can have that within our families as well. There are traditions and rituals, sometimes quite rigidly held. There is an ongoing story in my family that got reenacted last week. There was once a number of years ago that my stepdaughter said, "We're bringing scalloped potatoes to the Thanksgiving dinner." I thought, well, that'll be a nice change. And with scalloped potatoes, you don't need to have gravy. So we didn't make any gravy. Well, during the meal, my oldest son was just beside himself because you need gravy. Turkey gravy to put on the dressing and the meat and maybe almost everything else. And so we had stories of no end to the end of that dinner. Well, ever since, we've made sure we have turkey gravy at Thanksgiving dinner. And that last week, I think, my son made the gravy for us. Food is important within our families. And we know it's so much a part of our faith. In Genesis 1, verses 29 and 30, God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, and everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And so it was. Food and its production is connected to all of God's creation. And all are called to share in the creation in the banquet. In this World Food Sunday, we are called to do what we can to ensure that there is a good supply of food for everyone. A supply that is good and sustainable. So on World Food Day, we talk about, first of all, food charity. And churches over the years have been very involved in making sure of sometimes running food banks, sometimes collecting food for those food banks, making sure that everyone has some food. Now, food charity is very important, and we know especially in more recent times. During the pandemic, the food banks were used more and more. And now with inflation, it seems that they are even more prominent and asking that there be lots of food for people who really need it, who find that their cupboards are bare by the end of the month. And so there are lots of local appeals for food and opportunities for us to buy a bag of food at the store for people who are not able to get it themselves. We also have responded to international food crises. I think we all can remember the days of Biafra and the Horn of Africa, and Ethiopia, and Haiti, and so many other parts of the world where they faced a particular crisis, and we responded with food. And that will likely increase in years ahead because of climate crisis and the migration that will happen because of what happens within the climate. We show compassion by giving food to those who don't have it themselves. And second, we talk about food security on this day. That is reliable access to safe, affordable, and desired food. It is sometimes known as that line about give someone a fish and they eat for a day, teach someone to fish and they will eat for the rest of their lives. And so we have those opportunities to be able to ensure some security for the future. And many churches in our communities have been involved in community gardens and community kitchens, where people have the space to grow some food and to learn about doing that. And those community gardens are getting more and more important all the time as more people live in apartments and need a little bit of land to be able to grow some food. And in those kitchens, people learn how to cook and make food in a new way, and maybe even produce meals for families in need. And so we work within our communities to have some security of the food supply for the people. We work at that internationally as well. For some years, I've been a bit of a supporter of SHARE, which was an organization that was started by some farmers up in Caledon. They originally were sending breeding stock to the Caribbean and to Central and South America. Now they're quite a broad organization that provides seed and equipment and education and many other advantages for people who are in need in the Caribbean and in Central and South America. They provide education and resources to help the people to be self-sufficient in their food production. And third, on this day, we talk about food sovereignty. In 1993 was the beginning of La Via Campesina, a movement which was in response to what's happening in the world in this day. That in the free market system, there is a development of corporate agriculture, and it has now all become a part of a big business. And that has sometimes been devastating to the lives and livelihoods of peasants, small farmers, landless people, women farmers, indigenous people, people who are migrants around the world. It's hard to fit into this system of big corporate agriculture. We have seen it within our own lives. When I was growing up, I looked down the road and it was all 100-acre farms right down the road. And now things have changed. And I've seen on TV sometimes they'll talk about the plight of family farms, and they're talking about corporate farms that have thousands of acres, and they call them today family farms. And so food sovereignty is about the right of people to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced in ecological, sound, and sustainable systems. You may have heard about the protests of farmers in India the past 2 or 3 years. They are fighting to keep small farm holdings. They are trying to resist the laws and policies that are encouraging large corporate farms. It is like our own history. Back in the early 1800s, wealthy people, usually English, went into Scotland and bought up small farms to consolidate them, to be able to have large areas for the raising of sheep. And in that time, it was called the land clearances. It came with lots of fights, clans fighting against each other, who sided with England and who didn't. And it meant lots of people were cleared off the land. And those people had to go into the cities for the new industrial revolution, or they moved to places like Canada and the United States where they could get plots of land readily available for them. And so our forebears came here, many because of the land clearances, the changing in the food production. Last year, Margaret and I were in Pickle Barrel with a friend who was an NGO who worked around the world. She is now retired back in Kenya. And I asked, so Afghanistan, it's always at war. There are no resources, mineral resources that come out of the land. And they don't have oil. They don't have any industry. How do the people keep going? She said it's like just about the whole world. Families have a plot of land where they grow their food. That's why we need good land sovereignty policies within our world. It's because not everyone needs a Big Mac. So in the Bible, we have lots of stories about food. The fishers, the vineyards, the fig tree, threshing. Today we thank all those who grow the food, prepare it, package it, distribute it in stores, transport it. We are thankful for our system of food that allow us to eat well. And we are called to help within our faith in food charity, food security, and food sovereignty. We thank God for the food of this creation. And let us join together in a prayer that will be on your screen.